Welcome back to Be Productive. As business owners and leaders, we know the importance of having systems in place. But what do we do when we find out that those systems are not running the right way, or more importantly, are not compliant? That's going to set us back days, weeks, possibly even months. So, to help us talk about the importance of having regulatory compliance with all of our systems to protect our information is my friend Greg Schaefer. So, Greg, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, Clara.
Now, you've been in the information technology area for many, many years. Talk to us a little bit about how, as business owners and as leaders, that we can ensure compliance with all the various information systems that are out there.
Well, this may seem a little bit counterintuitive, but the best way is to initially not focus on the compliance requirements per se. You want to build a holistic information security program built on a standard like the NIST cybersecurity framework. Now, while you're doing this, of course, you want to understand your compliance needs. The reason why I say that is that if you build a program holistically like that, based on one of those frameworks, you'll meet at least 90%, give or take, of the compliance requirements for whatever regulation that you're trying to reach. And if you dig into the details a little bit more, we'll take PCI, for example. That's the payment card industry data security standard for retailers. When you give a credit card for a retailer, you swipe it or you tap it, they have to be PCI compliant. If you're a merchant, you have to comply with that framework. Now, there
Mhm.
are several levels of compliance, if you will, assessments, levels based on your complexity, how many cards you're taking. And most of the time you can assess yourself. Sometimes if you take a lot of cards, you need to have an auditor come in. But the point is that once you've determined your level, you have to assess your organization against the dozens or even hundreds of requirements, and you have to interpret the results correctly. And here's where it gets to be a little bit difficult, where people really fall into a trap. They might say a requirement might be, well, we need to have multi-factor authentication in place. That's when you have the little authenticator on your phone that you put in a code with. And so you know that you do that because to getting to email, well, every time I log into my email on the web from Microsoft Office, for example, I got to put in a code. So we have multi-factor authentication. But the PCI requirements actually are broader, where it requires that for all systems that are involved with that credit card number. And the point is, if you answer it not exactly, you can risk not being able to take credit cards anymore. The PCI Council might say you are not compliant. If you take MasterCard or Visa, they might say, or Discover or Amex, with all the ones out there, they might take away your right for it. So the whole point, and the same thing with security insurance as well, too. So the whole point is that you want to make sure that you respond correctly. Otherwise, you could be in danger of losing those services.
And yeah, you lose those services. That could just completely change the landscape of how you serve your customers. And again, having to then backtrack and re put things in place. That could zap a company's and organization's productivity right there. I would imagine one of the biggest challenges that it's out there is the changing of compliance and regulation because it doesn't stay stagnant. It's changing all the time. So this means that we have to constantly audit. So talk to us about the importance of auditing in making sure that we are staying in compliance.
Well, yeah, regulations change. Like I just mentioned PCI. Well, PCI 4.0, the first major update to that regulation, I think in like 10 or 12 years, something like that, just became effective this past March. So not only is that changing, but technology changes and threat environment changes. So compliance always changes. You may be in compliance one year and not in compliance the next year, and you would have done nothing different. We talk about in information security the three lines of defense, and briefly, it's important to understand that in context of audit, because audit's one of the three lines. The first line are your IT folks that do your firewall configurations, antivirus, endpoint detection, logging, all those technical wizardry things, setting up email accounts and SharePoint access so that you access what you need to and not what you're not supposed to. That's first line of defense. And then the second line of defense is the risk management portion. That's where the chief information security officer, or by extension for small and mid-sized businesses, the virtual chief information security officer, sits there. And that's more of a strategic role. That's where we are determining, well, what do we need to put in place to mitigate risks? And then the third line is audit. And audit, I like to say, keeps first and second line on it honest, but it really provides the oversight to make sure, A, that the business is doing what they say that they're going to be doing to protect information, and B, that they're adhering to whatever compliance standard, like again, PCI could be one, SOC 2 could be one. And if it's an external auditor, then the external auditor can produce then a report for customers and prospects that have a third-party attestation now about the compliance of your organization. And that's the key. That's very important. If you can get to that point, then you can show to interested parties, hey, this audit shows that we are doing what we say that we're doing in protecting your information.
Yeah. Wow. So many different levels that we need to keep in mind. And I would think that a lot of people might believe that they need to have somebody on site, but you've been doing this for years and you do this virtually, and you've been an expert in this area for such a long time. So what does a partner like you, someone who is virtual, be able to, help facilitate all this and bring this together?
I like to say that we act as a translator. And what I mean by that is that we translate between the business and the auditor. And where this comes into play often, sometimes auditors, particularly the ones that are new to the audit field, they're fresh off of being educated. They want to prove their worth out in the field. And they find that you're not doing one particular requirement of one of those regulations or standards. They look at the environment in binary terms, and either you're doing something or you're not. But they're forgetting that what we're trying to do is we're trying to mitigate the risk, not necessarily check a box with regards to one requirement. And that's where the concept of compensating controls comes into play. One of the things that I do often is I'll be talking with an auditor will say, you're not doing X. And I'll say, well, we're doing A, B, C, D, and E. And not only are we mitigating the risk, reducing it to an acceptable level of what X would have done, we're actually doing it better because we have layers there. And it's very hard for a business owner to be able to do that directly with an auditor because they don't understand the information security aspects of the controls, and vice versa. It's hard sometimes for the inexperienced auditor to understand the business enough to be able to pull out those controls. So that's probably the best thing that we can do. The other
Wow.
thing is that the virtual CISO, well, at least the best ones out there, the good ones, they're effective communicators. And because of that, they're a very effective ally to have on your team.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. This needs to be part of your team. This is part of the overall umbrella of making sure that, everything is being covered. Because if we want to be able to achieve the results we want to achieve as a business owner, we've got to have all these different parts together. So, Greg, you always bring so much insight into areas that many of us never even think about. I would love to learn a little bit more about you and your story. Tell us a little bit more about your company, and some of the services that you can offer people.
Well, it's truly a passion that I formed the company back in 2017. I wanted to be able to help small and mid-sized businesses with the items that we talked about and more, the translation, for example, that I realized that they didn't have the skill set, they didn't have access to folks like me that can do that. And in that sense, they were losing productivity because they were in some cases spinning their wheels trying to figure out how to reach compliance with certain areas. And that's what we really focus on. But we don't focus on just compliance. We focus on building that security program. If an organization comes to us and just wants to be compliant with something, we ask them politely to look somewhere else because our passion, our goal, our meaning is to build security programs that are holistic enough that not only will they protect your information, which is the most important thing, but they'll also make sure that you're compliant with whatever it is that you want to be compliant with.
That's fantastic. And one of the things I know that you also are really passionate about and pride yourself on is making sure that it works for them. It's not one size fits all. And
Right.
I know that you always offer a free consultation to even just start the process and just have the conversation to see if it's something that works. So, how can people access you and get that free consultation with you?
It's very easy. Just go to our website at vcisoservices.com. There should be a button either on the front page or actually both on the front page or the contact us page. You just click on that and you'll get on my schedule 15 minutes. We'll talk about what it is you're looking for. And if it's something that we can help with, then we'll schedule a longer follow-up. You can also call if you'd like. It's very easy. We have a phone number on the website, or you can email our general address, info@vcisoservices.com.
Love it. So, for those of you that are watching, listen to these things that Greg is talking about because it's imperative. Stop spinning your wheels on these higher level items that you are not an expert at. Your business, your customers, they need you to be really compliant and have these things dialed in, not just for their protection, but also for your protection and being able to have you exist long term. So, Greg, thank you for being here, for sharing, and for all of you watching, book a call with Greg and make sure that you are protected as well. So stay tuned because we'll be right back with more Be Productive.